Hi guys, what we're going to do here is get you set up with Visual Studio Code, Python, Pygame, everything that's required to be able to run the Python course in Year 9 Digital Programming and Robotics. So there is an assumption made here that you know how to download and install software. If you have never done that before, there will be a video up on Trove that shows you how to do that and go through the prompts. So that is the assumption. But what we've got here is there'll also be this document or this slide that will also be on Trove. So this has the links and some steps. So there's a few options there in terms of getting yourself set up. Obviously, watching the video will be the first point of call, but also having the slide that will be available on Trove to go through the steps and access the links and some of the other information required to get you started. So Visual Studio Code is some coding software or platform by Microsoft that is available to be used on any device. So whether you're Mac or PC, Windows, it shouldn't matter. So there's a few steps here that you need to work through. So the first step is to download Microsoft Visual Studio Code. The second one is to download the Python software. The third one is inside Visual Studio Code. We'll open that up and we'll add the Python extension. The fourth step is that you'll set up a folder on your OneDrive called Python Project. Hopefully you've got like a Year 9 folder and a subject folder, but it should be saved into that. Then we will run a .py file, so that is the file extension name for a Python file, and we'll test it out. And then the last thing we'll do is we will add a Pygame pip installation, which basically adds in the Pygame library into Visual Studio Code so you can do the Pygame project. There are some important links. So there's two here that we're going to work through. The first one is the Visual Studio Code. VSC is the acronym that I'm going to use. So if you see that, that basically means Visual Studio Code. And the second one is Python. Okay, the third bit here is the Pygame pip install. We'll run these a little bit later, but you will need to come back and access this information. So the first thing we do is we go to Visual Studio Code. You type that into Google. It will bring up a download option. So you can download Visual Studio Code. You choose, I guess, the platform that you're using. Likely you'll be using Windows or Mac. So you can click on that. I've already downloaded this onto my device, so but I'll just go through some of the prompts for you. It's got some nice step-by-step guides here and the extensions that you can include. We won't need to go through this at the moment, but you can see that I've got an executable file that is downloaded. It doesn't take very long. You go show in folder, and then if you double click that, it will take you through, I guess, some steps, accept the agreement, go next until that is installed. Okay, the second step is that we will need to download Python. So Python is a sort of a text-based programming language that we will be using inside of Visual Studio Code. The links are here to go basically to python.org downloads. Click on that and it will take you to a downloads window. So download the latest, version for Windows will be the first option. If you have a Mac or something like that, you've got your other options down here. You want to download that. It will come down to your little downloads windows down here. You can either go show in folder or open. Again, as mentioned earlier, there's an assumption here that you know how to install software, but the steps are quite easy. You'll just install now, follow the prompts until that is all installed, and then we will be ready to move on to the next step and getting that set up into Visual Studio Code by adding the extension. So you should have if you go to your start or your search bar here, Visual Studio Code should be an option now that you've installed that, and you should also have a shortcut on your desktop. When you first go to Visual Studio Code, you'll probably be greeted with a little welcome screen like this. Might look a little bit different for the first time user. But what we want to do is we want to click on this little one here. So the three little squares with the one square breaking off, which is our extensions. Okay, the extension that we want to install is a Python extension. I'll just drag this over so you can see it a little bit easier. So Python, okay, so this one here is a Python extension pack is what you want to do. I've got it disabled or uninstalled. Yours will probably say enable and install. So you want to install that. And it's basically got some little extensions that will basically make your Python programming a little bit easier for you. You can put that in there. There is also a Python extension, direct one there, that is embedded inside this as well, so you don't need to do both. But those are the two main ones that you would need to do at this stage. And I guess later on, if there's any other extensions, they're very easy to install from that little extensions tab there. Okay, so once that is enabled, the next step there, if we go back to our steps, we've got the Visual Studio Code downloaded, tick. We've downloaded Python, tick. And we've added the Python extension pack in Visual Studio Code, tick. So the next thing is that we need to set up a folder on our OneDrive. So like I mentioned, you hopefully have a class folder, Year 9 Digital Tech. And within that, I want you to create a folder called Python Project. Okay, so if we go to our OneDrive, and then within OneDrive, you want a new folder, and it's just going to be called Python Project. Okay, everything to do with this project you want to save into this Python folder. Okay, that is going to be your go-to for all your Python files, all your graphics, everything goes into that folder there. Okay, so when we go back to Visual Studio Code and we click on here, just ignore that folder I've got. You should go File, Open Folder. I go to my OneDrive. I've got my Python project here. I want to select that folder. And I've got it here, Python project. That's my folder. That's where everything is going to go. Now, this is the first test to see whether everything has been installed correctly for you. What you will do is you'll click this little plus page here, the new file. And what we're going to do, call this is go Python test. And then we're going to go _1 and then a .py. And you notice that as soon as I put py, it's made it into a little Python file there. Hit enter, and then we should be into our Python space. Got a little play up here to run the code, and down here you should hopefully have that your interpreter pops up as Python, 3.8.5 or something like that. Okay. Now, if we go back to this slide, so it is worthwhile having this and the video open at the same time. We're going to run our first piece of Python code. So the first piece of code we use is print bracket, quotation, hello world, quotation bracket. And what we want is to, if we try this, we should have our device print that text to the screen. Okay, so let's go back here. I'm going to write print. And you notice that it's got sort of like a predictive text thing where it can put in some here. So it already does the double brackets for me. If I do the quotations, it already does that for me as well. If I put in hello world, okay. And then if I hit play, it should come up down here in the terminal. So it's gone to terminal, and what I've got is the hello world text has worked there. I know now that my extension's working, that I've got Python included into the Visual Studio Code. At this very point in time, everything is looking good. We've got everything running that we need. The last step is that we need to install Pygame. Pygame is a library with a whole lot of resources that allow us to run games inside Python. So it allows you to play a platformer game, or if you talk about sprites and things like that, it has a lot of that information already coded or programmed back end that makes life a little bit easier for us.